Hello, and welcome to the next Black Men Excel session. I'm Justin Barton, Senior Vice President of Digital Strategy and Partnerships at Black Enterprise. Today, we'll be discussing Black men in tech, creating the next generation of young innovators. The tech industry presents rich opportunities for building lucrative careers, many that don't require a college degree. This session will detail efforts to get more Black males into the tech industry pipeline, starting as early as middle school. We will explore how you can find your place and discover a career in the tech ecosystem. We have a great panel today. I would like to welcome Morgan S. Tucker, Security Executive and Managing Director at Accenture, Matthew Mitchell, Tech Fellow at the Ford Foundation, and Gerald Moore Sr., Founder and Executive Director of Mission Fulfilled 2020. Let's start by going around the horn and having a brief synopsis of each of your backgrounds. Can we start with you, Gerald?
Yes. Well, I'm a graduate of Norfolk State University with a degree in electronics engineering technology. From that, I went on to an over 20-year career as a federal government contractor in information systems and cybersecurity. And last year, I founded Mission Fulfilled 2030, whose vision is to inspire, educate, and activate young Black males in tech and STEM from K through 12.
Great. And Morgan, can you tell us about yourself?
Sure, Justin. Morgan Tucker. I am a 1995 graduate of Morehouse College, also a graduate of the University of North Texas with a master's in library and information science. I've been in information technology for about 2 decades now, with half of that time spent leading cybersecurity for Accenture. Specifically, I look after our products business in the Southeastern United States. And I'm also Accenture's North America lead for security, inclusion, diversity, and belonging.
And Matthew Mitchell.
Hi, I'm Matthew Mitchell. I'm a tech fellow at the Ford Foundation. I focus on cybersecurity there. I'm also a professional computer hacker. I founded an organization called Crypto Harlem, which teaches Black folks about cybersecurity opportunities and also surveillance in their neighborhoods.
No, that's amazing. And thank you all. So let's start with the first question. Let's discuss the state of Black men in tech. What is the state of it now? How does the industry look? Are we represented there? Just a little background. I'll toss it out to any of you to answer.
I'll jump in on that. Well, first of all, Black males right now make up less than 5% of the high tech and STEM workforce, right? And we know that Black males also have a graduation rate of about 50%. So the opportunities that exist to have Black men in the field is a small number based on the amount of basic graduates that we have.
Yeah. And what do you think, Matthew?
Well, just to pick up on that point, right, which is a powerful one. You know, whenever I'm in Crypto Harlem and I'm talking to folks and I say, hey, what's your favorite app? What's your favorite tool? Like, what do you use or whatever? And then they'll say something like, oh, Facebook or whatever, right? And then I'll ask them, well, how many people do you think work there? It's mostly a mixed group of folks. And like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, Facebook has something like 59,000 employees in the US. Then I'll ask them, what percent do you think look like you? And it's never right, because in 2020, the number is something like 3.9% that's Black. And that goes from the boardroom to the mailroom, right? So these are really despicable numbers. Also, what we know is that Reveal, the Center for Investigative Reporting, in 2016, 2017, 2018, they've been doing a lot of work on getting diversity numbers. And tech companies say that these are trade secrets. They don't want to share. We have this thing called the EE01, which are like diversity numbers from companies. And a lot of tech companies dodge them because they're so bad. They're abysmal. So that's the state right now. And, when we're looking at those numbers, I have to say our best computer scientists and engineers coming out of the best schools in this country, if they can't get a job there, what's it looking like for, Black men who were formerly incarcerated or don't have degrees, but are geniuses on computers and programming and are developing these skills every day?
No, it's a good point. And Morgan, you are in the corporate world. How do you see the state of Black men in tech right now?
It's lonely for folks that look like us, for Black men specifically, particularly in tech. I stopped looking for myself in the rooms that I find myself in a long time ago and just got used to being the guy. And so the pipeline, as my colleagues have articulated, requires improvement. There's a lot of opportunity to do better.
Sure. Yes. And I know Matt used the word despicable about the number of Black men in tech, but what is the driving force? What do you see as the barriers that are preventing Black men from getting into tech at this time?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I would say, generally speaking, just not seeing ourselves centered in the profession in the first place. You could say it's a scarcity of mentorship, of sponsorship, advocacy. But I think it's something really fundamental, which is if you can't see yourself doing the work, then you gravitate to the places where you do see yourself. And we just don't see, still, even in 2021, about to be 2022, a lot of great, very visible and vocal and celebrated examples of IT excellence in that intersects with Black masculinity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Matt, what do you see as some of the barriers that are preventing Black men from getting into tech?
Well, I would say we're definitely into tech, right? Mm-hmm. So if you look at Pew Research studies, it shows that Black and brown folks, African Americans in this country, we over-index on mobile phones and any kind of consumer electronic technology on the, but you can't. I
should say the tech industry, right?
Yeah, the tech industry, right? So, but that's what I'm saying. So we have that passion, and then it's not like, oh, I want to make a game, I want to make a program, I want to do my own thing. But what we see is from, the very clear point about representation. If you see it, you can be it. Well, you can't see us. And we're here. There's few of us, right? We might be the only ones in the rooms of our individual organizations, but then we have our own professional networks. But we're not being put into the spotlight. We're not being marketed to our own people. And therefore, they can't see us. Right? We become invisible even in our own communities. And I think that is the biggest issue, really. It's not, and that's, there are some other things that I can think of. I've worked as a hiring manager where I'm pleading in the room to try to give this young person a chance, whether that's young in age or young in their career. And I can see that they have exactly what it takes. But there's a lot of coded language, like this person's not a cultural fit here, or they don't meet all the specific criteria that was in a badly written job description, right? Mm-hmm. So there are some tripwires, but we can get you over them if we can mentor you or talk to you ahead of time.
Yeah. And speaking about that mentorship, I want to turn to Gerald. So obviously you start with Black males, boys, at a very young age in middle school. What's your reasoning behind that? And what is the process of you mentoring them, helping them with certification? What is that whole process to get them into tech, to get that pipeline started?
Well, when you look at it, both Morgan and Matt both mentioned that representation matters, right? Mm-hmm. And representation does matter. When we became engineers in our field and cybersecurity professionals, once we enter the workplace, we become virtually invisible. So we've become successful, but we're not representative in the community as what these young people can actually be. And I'll give you a case in point in that. I went to speak to a school in Chicago, and I asked them, well, what does the face of a cybersecurity engineer look like? And they all resounded, a white man, right? So one, we have to change that the face of tech is just white men. So what we do in our organization is we create tech and STEM programs that are led by Black men so that these young people can actually see that Black men exist in the space. And then we move forward by teaching them the skills that you may not be able to score high enough in high school or have the GPA to go into anybody's engineering or computer science program. But we have a program where you can get certified and enter the IT workforce from that space. So we've been very successful in doing that. And I think we need to do more of that. And we have another program called the Technology to Manhood Lecture Series, where we showcase Black men in tech to Black boys. So I'm going to companies and corporate and saying, hey, let's showcase the Black men that you have to these Black boys. And then let's work on making investments in the future of technology with Black people, with our Black youth, right? So then there's opportunity that they can see and they can touch and actually have a wider breadth of what we do in the space.
Yes, and you were speaking about certification. So I know you really promote, I think it's called the IT Fundamentals certification. Is that correct? What does it take to get certified, or are there any qualifications? What is necessary to be certified?
So what we do, we're a CompTIA certified organization, and CompTIA is one of the foremost certification bodies in IT in the world, actually. And we have a 10-week program where we take them through the coursework necessary to be prepared to sit for the IT fundamentals certification. And someone who has that certification actually qualifies to enter the IT world on what we call a tier 3 help desk level. And once you can get in, then you can work yourself up. And then you can move on to more advanced certifications like the A+ certification, the Network Plus certification, and the Cybersecurity Plus certification. A young man who has those four certifications can become very powerful in the industry if given the opportunity, even without a college degree.
That's great. It's good for everybody to know this. And I know, Matthew, you kind of look at it from a post-secondary status, right? So you're taking people who've already graduated high school, and now you're trying to give them, I believe it's Security Plus certification, and you're also helping, I think, through Crypto Harlem, or really helping them be able to afford the certification itself. So how does that work?
Yeah, let's go into it. Like, let's say the Security Plus, which is a CompTIA certification. It's 90 questions, it's 90 minutes, and most people who work in cybersecurity don't actually have it. So when you show up for an interview and you have that, they can't step to you, right? So what's it take? Well, you know, it costs like around $200 to get one attempt to take the test. You know, around $400 will give you 2 attempts to take the test, right? A little bit less than that. You get a discount. And anyone can go in and plan to take this test. You can take it virtually. You know, because of COVID, you can now take it virtually. You could take it, they have test centers in any major cluster of population, whether it's a city or a busy town, you'll find a test center. That's the beautiful thing about that network. So it could be rural, it could be urban. You could just go in, schedule your time and take your test, and you find out whether you passed instantaneously. So you'll automatically just see it on that screen. Now, normally, an IT professional wants to take this test, they might take a course that costs $5,000, $10,000, whatever $1,000, and it's Monday to Friday intensive, and on Saturday it's all in your head, you know, or it's a 1-month course, and at the end you go right into the test. So the momentum is going to help you pass, right? So what we do is we've been working with folks with absolutely no technical background, and we're doing like a year with them, right? And I'm like, look, we're going to keep failing this test until you pass it. But we're going to make you more than a paper cert, more than a paper tiger. We're going to teach you the actual hacking elements you need to get into this stuff. And we will connect them to groups that they need to follow, you know, like Blacks in Cybersecurity. They're a group of cybersecurity professionals who are like connected to the computer hacking world, right? And they're Black folks and they look like you. And again, they have amazing skill sets. So we ramp you up So when it comes to that initial HR interview, right? It's not even a technical interview. It's like, could you work here? You'll pass that, right? We do mock interviews. We work with experts in the field to help just beat you up and just get you to the point where, nothing can phase you. And that's kind of taking it from where Gerald drops you off and takes you to push you over that line, right? And again, we're working mostly with young adults to folks who just come from the block. From the block to the sock is what I say. That's a security operations center, right? So, it doesn't matter what you look like. The guy next to you might have a blue mohawk and a dog collar on. The woman next to you or gender nonconforming person next to you might be, disabled in a wheelchair. It's all about your mind when you're in that space. So if you got, tats on your neck or music notes on your knuckles, it's about what you can perform to defend these systems.
Sure. Yes. And then I guess from taking it from there, what the both of you have done, come to you, Morgan. Do you find that as someone who's hired people and security professional yourself, do you find that these certifications are important? Is the path that Gerald and Matt are talking about a path that you see that would help people get into the security industry?
Right. I really appreciate the conversation, and I'm definitely stealing from the block to the sock.
Take it.
It's consider it done. What we're talking about is preparation, and it makes me think about what do I look for when I'm looking at a candidate, regardless of color, but especially in our Black men, is preparation. Is what is the work that you've done? What is the practice that you have put in beforehand? And when you're saying things to me like, you demonstrate an investment in yourself. I have Security Plus. I have some experience. I went and sought out this internship. Here are the things that I've done. Here's what my home lab looks like. I want to hear that passion. I stopped looking for 4-year degrees a long time ago as a hallmark of potential success for a career in cybersecurity. In fact, some of the most successful people I know, whether it's attack or defend, will probably never have a college degree, because going to school, and please don't take this as me saying don't go to school, because education is the levels the playing field, but experience trumps all when it comes to this field. And cybersecurity, in my experience, is extremely egalitarian in that respect. But you have to come with the preparation. You have to come with the investment in yourself, and there's no better way to demonstrate that than with certifications like Security Plus, like the Certificate of Cloud Security Knowledge, which is an open book test, and you get a couple of takes for about the same cost as the Security Plus. There's so many ways to demonstrate that I am about this. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. People always forget that people on the attack side, they mostly don't have degrees. So, it's why should you wait to get a degree necessarily to be in the security industry if you want to be on the defense side? I know, like, Matt, you were a lot on the attack side as well and probably have a degree, but I think it just shows that, like you said, getting education is important, but at the same time, certainly the other avenues and opportunities to get into this industry. I want to go back to you again, Morgan. I know you have certain indicators that you look for in an individual, and in this case, let's say a Black male, to show that they would have the aptitude to be in the tech industry. Can you give us some of those indicators?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, Justin, this is going to be someone who is unafraid of choosing their own adventure. Mm-hmm. This is a person who is not waiting to be told what they're going to do on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. They're going to be looking to fill in the white space. It's a person who asks a lot of questions. Even the questions that may seem silly to other people, and that takes being okay with a certain amount of vulnerability, which unfortunately is all too uncommon with Black males. And this is where I get into conversations about this toxic Black masculinity, mm-hmm. where we are afraid to ask questions, where we're afraid to do things that make us look or sound like we're trying to be white or something other than the prototypical Black male, whatever that even is. But I'm looking for the guy that, like I said, home lab, reads a lot of comic books, science fiction. I mean, some of this is trite, but they are also uncommonly strong indicators. There's a lot of intersectionality, I would be willing to bet. But also that person who, like I said, asks questions, but also listens more than they tell. And maybe not necessarily someone who is interested in just breaking things, but when things break, they don't freak out. They're trying to figure out how to fix it. And they're very interested in how things get put back together, right? So they're asking the question and they're looking for the answer. And then finally, someone who is willing to collaborate. I'm not looking for lone wolves because we hunt in packs in my business.
I love that.
Yeah, makes sense. And I want to go to you as well, Gerald, because obviously, like I said, you're starting them out in middle school. Are there any indicators that you look for in someone in middle school, or are you just taking every single Black male and saying, hey, at least try it out? What's the strategy there?
Well, unfortunately, many of our school systems are turning our kids away, especially our Black boys, and basically muting their genius in the fact that Black males make up less than 2% of the public school workforce. So it's highly likely that a young man may never have a Black male educator in his career path, as I did not my whole K through 12 experience. So when we meet those young men that are, as Morgan described, we have the new terminology, which is the blurred, right? We have that blurred community. And what I'm looking for is young men who are just showing a passion for tech, whatever that may be, whether they're gamers, whether they are hackers. And I'll ask a question to my guys, like, what do you want to be in tech? And the majority of them will say a hacker. And that's just because what they know from like the gaming community, right? So then, well, what is that? Like, how do you actually get into that? And they don't know. So then I get an opportunity to engage them and actually show them what a hacker does and how they could become an ethical hacker from either, the attack side or the defense side, and get them excited to be able to say, hey, let's move you from the consumer side of technology to the producer side of technology, which most of them have been pushed away from based on the simple fact that they're not good at math, or they're not taking a high level chemistry or physics or things like that, which in our school systems, the only way you can become an engineer or IT is to have a high aptitude in math and science, when that actually has nothing to do with the technology.
Sure. And then I think I would like to ask you, Matt. So I think some of the things that we've seen at Black Enterprise as we've done our Tech Connect conferences in the past is just, the historically Black college and university system. We have some very high-end ones and some other ones that don't really succeed at the computer sciences, information technology. What is the answer there? How can we get, our Black universities better at producing more people in the tech industry?
Well, I think when it comes to our, HBCUs, there's a history of amazing Black talent. The NSA of this country, right? They've had in like the 80s, no, it was the 90s, someone found a box with a bunch of photos in it. They were going through the archives, and there was this Black man getting an award, and they were like, who's this? Who are this? A room full of Black women and men on typewriters. They're like, what is this? And they realized that after research, there was a gentleman named William Coffey, who was one of the first cryptologists in the 1930s, 1940s, right? And he was tasked with finding, Black men and women to serve their country in the NSA and break ciphers and codes. And they were the first hackers, right? And they're lost to history. And it's not there. I could tell you about people who were doing this work and they're in their 20s or 30s and no one's ever heard of them, right? So I think there's a role in our universities first. It doesn't take computers or a lab to educate our folks on the contributions of Black technologists. Like William Coffey worked in the mailroom, right, at the NSA. He was a delivery person. So Black technologists, that's the core thing, right? Then, in philanthropy, like Ford Foundation and, Mackenzie Scott has donated a lot to HBCUs. Mm-hmm. Professionals, we could donate our time, we can donate our funds, we can donate our bodies and faces to HBCUs to just visit and help. I reach out to Howard University once a year, and I have some folks over there who I work with and just present to the media classes and the technology classes to explain, like, look, a hacker looks like you, and the hackers always looked like you. In fact, some of the first hackers looked like you, right? Before this was even a thing. And it is a little bit of a meritocracy. You'll notice that this is a technology conversation, but keep going back to cybersecurity, there's more jobs than people. So look, if you want to learn to code and that's your passion, or, whether it's like cryptocurrencies or video games, look, that's great too. But you're going to have very little friction when you get that cybersecurity job. You'll see a job opening and it's a year old and they're still hungry for that candidate. That's what the space looks like. So it's almost like, look, race definitely plays a part in all things, but as racist as your hiring manager might be, you got the skills, you got those certs, you're getting that job, you're getting that check. So that's what I want to say.
No, definitely. And, I think that's a great, I think there's so much to be done at the HBCUs. And certainly, I think, hopefully with the new legislation that comes through, more funding there, and we'll see, hiring of great people like yourself, Matt, to come in there and teach courses and really aspire the young people to get into this field. But I was thinking about going back to Morgan. I know you touched on a couple times this toxic Black masculinity. And first, I just want you to talk a little bit about it, and then I'll just give some thoughts that I have about it as well. But what do you see as, what is that? I know it's a barrier to people getting into tech, Black males getting into tech, but can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, any Black man that's ever been asked why you talk like a white boy knows exactly what I'm talking about. Why do you like that white stuff? You're over there playing around with that computer, come grab this basketball. Or if you, any number of slights growing up, why you like comic books, but that all, are some variation on the theme of why you talk white. And there are the backhanded compliments that may come along with that. He's so articulate, he reads well, all of these things. But it is that I think when I say toxic Black masculinity, the expectation that you will be a Black man in this very narrow mode of being a Black man. I can shoot a basketball. I play football. I do these few things, and that's what makes me a Black male. If I do anything outside, if I color outside of the lines, then I'm something other, and I have to explain myself. I can't be celebrated. I'm shunned and I'm ignored. I don't believe I think things are changing. The culture is evolving. It is more acceptable to be a Black geek, to be a Black nerd now in certain circles, but in some respects, I think we're backsliding.
No, yeah. And the reason I was going to bring it up, because my biggest pet peeve is the pipeline that I see a lot of Black males going on, is that, they look at the things that make them happy and go into it. So I always say sports business management, that type of thing. Like, okay, or, entertainment industry. And those are the pipelines that we see a lot of Black males trying to go into, but they're also incredibly competitive from the normal white space, right? People coming in there and competing against them with, great degrees and everything like that. So I always try to talk about exposure. And I guess that's the next question I would have for you, Gerald. Like, how can we make the exposure better for, just Black males, younger Black males, to see different role models they can look up to and say, hey, I could be in that space and I can break past that Black toxic masculinity?
Well, I think through organizations like that I run, Mission Fulfilled 2030, through Crypto Harlem, right? Yep. You get involved in these organizations and you're going to see Black men working with Black youth, right? From I'm starting with kids now in kindergarten and helping to give them an understanding of who I am as a technologist, and also how I relate to sports and hip hop and all those things. So I don't have to be outside the box. I don't have to limit myself because, I like basketball or football. I actually think those things are important because they help build self-discipline for Black men, to give them the opportunity to be able to focus on a tech field. Without football, I don't become a cybersecurity engineer with 20 years experience without that, because that taught me to self-discipline to kind of overcome the things that I was going to deal with in the workforce. But with what we're doing with Mission Fulfilled and bringing Black men to the forefront from all different technologies and giving them the opportunity to present themselves to Black boys so we can see the vision of what we can become. You know, I always ask my guys in your community, who are you becoming? Right? Who are you becoming? Because in our communities, we either build or destroy. Are you a builder or you're a destroyer? Right? So I'm out there teaching guys that, hey, I'm cool, I'm hip, I ball, I'm in hip hop, and I'm also tech. Yeah. So when we put that together and show them that everything they could do, and then even when you move from the sports realm, right? Here's the money that you're going to make in the long term in tech versus what you're going to make in the long term in the NBA or the NFL, right? Because at some point, the technologist is going to surpass the average NFL or NBA player, because the average time in that league is 3 to 4 years. We only see the stars. We don't see those guys on the bench who get cut after 2 or 3 years and then they're just done, right? So we want to show those guys also that there's, you know, a way where you can still floss or whatever the latest term is in tech. Like you can, you know, be flamboyant in tech. And we're the creators. We create everything. Every social media app that's out there, it's been Black people that have made them flourish. And we bring that to the forefront and say, hey, we should be producing this technology instead of just being the consumer making everybody else rich. And once they understand that, they really get involved in our programs and what we do.
Yeah. And I think that makes total sense. And I think some of the things we talk about exposure, and I know this conversation has been very security oriented, but at the same time, there are multitude of careers out there within tech. And maybe Matthew, obviously you were talking about, you know, crypto and gaming. What are some of the different avenues outside of security that you see as viable paths for, you know, Black males to get into?
Well, there's quite a lot. I would say we have to be strategic. You have to be evidence-based. You know what I'm saying? So when you go into the workforce, there's a gauntlet of microaggressions waiting for you. There's so much friction. That's why you'll see a lot of, you know, the few that do make it and get into these tech companies or found these tech companies, but then they can't get funding from a VC or venture capitalist to keep their company going, or they can't get promoted, right? They can't get recognized in their departments. So you need to have a certain strength, a certain resolve, a certain reason why you're doing this work that is not a normal reason why people would work a job. And there are areas where you'll have easier time. So like I also try to direct people to places where they're not going to be in a hyper competitive space, where they're going to have an easier time. Like if you're like, okay, I know HTML, JavaScript, I want to be a web developer, that ship has sailed, right? So there's an 11-year-old who's going to kick your butt in an interview. Just it's over, right? Yeah. So artificial intelligence, algorithmic analysis, you know, these things, data science, those are areas that are also less competitive, right? And when I say less competitive, I don't mean the bar is lower, right? But I mean if you're in front of someone who because you look like us is going to treat you or, you know, look at you different, they'll be forced to hire you still, right? So that's a better place to be than someone who can hide their racism behind a rejection letter of some other reason. So I would say the AI space, I would say the data science space, I would say, of course, the cryptocurrency space, I would say the forensic space, right, which is you know, mostly dominated by law enforcement, right? And there are opportunities there, you know, and where do you get the resolve to make it once you get that job? Well, I know a lot of, you know, brothers and sisters who work in these spaces and they work through the military because that was where they got the education and the strengthening, and they didn't have to deal with so many of these microaggressions, right? Or macroaggressions, really. I know folks who are part of, you know, amazing programs that were, you know, help them build it. That's why I think, you know, what Gerald's doing with the youngest of us, that really inspires me every day, right? Because I meet folks who are just so beaten up and given up on themselves. And that's where we pick up from. And it's so nice when I'm hearing stories that will protect our Black men, you know, young Black boys from a lot of that. So I hope that makes sense.
No.
And Justin, I want to add to that.
Yeah.
So here's another opportunity that we're actually looking over with a low barrier of entry, and that is tech sales, right? We should also be training young men to get involved in tech sales, because you don't necessarily need to know the technologies, right? You need to learn a little bit enough to be powerful and be able to understand what they do, but you don't have to be so immersed in it that you actually need to know how they work, right? So tech sales is a great opportunity for young Black males to actually get in and earn wages that, you know, will provide a good living for them and their families.
No,
Yeah, it's very, very lucrative. You know, and going back to that, you know, athletes and basketball, and we already know, like, you got a 3 to 4 year run, and then 3 to 4 years outside of the game, you know, you don't have any money anymore. You file for bankruptcy, right? So, you know, long term, tech sales is a space where you are going to really hit those high numbers long term and run, you know, circles around athletes.
No, definitely, 100%. It's great industry. And I think we have time for one more question, but I'll make it one more takeaway. So Morgan, what's the last takeaway that you would like to have for this conversation?
I would say there is hope. There is hope. There are models. As I'm listening to, the conversation, I'm thinking about the models like Dr. Paul Judge, former CTO for Barracuda Networks, cybersecurity inventor, probably soon to be a billionaire, also a Morehouse man, shameless plug. But I'm saying that those models do exist. How do we amplify their voices? How do we get them visible? And one of the things that I was thinking as we're talking is, where are we in the media? Where are we as the talking heads? Where are we as consultants on movies and TV sets when some writer is designing some cockamamie cybersecurity scenario, that's going to make anybody who's in security laugh when they see it? That's where we need to be. In front of the camera, where are those opportunities? So I think they're there. Maybe we need to be more intentional about identifying them and stepping into those roles.
Great points all around. So certainly, Morgan, Matthew, Gerald, thank you so much for this great discussion. I loved having it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Justin.